My wife, the lovely and feisty CarolAnn Williams, tells me to send you her best.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And I was trying to remember, I know our relationship was through the office, OB/GYN, but I couldn't remember if I delivered babies for her or just kind of took care of her GYN things.
No.
Fill me in.
Okay. First of all, let me fill in the listeners and viewers who may be with us.
Okay.
This is Dr. Harold Burton. His friends and family call him Rusty. A few of us call him Captain GYNO, which we'll explain as we go. But Dr. Burton was my wife's gynecologist, starting about the time we got married, which was 1988. And no, you didn't take care of any babies because what you did was she had endometriosis, severe endometriosis, and you did the, what do you call it? You did the
ablation?
Huh?
An ablation or hysterectomy?
Hysterectomy. Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
I haven't had to think about that for a long time. So yes,
Neither have I.
And I remember, she was very much relieved when you told her that you were going to, in your words, you were going to take out the baby maker, but leave the playpen or something like that. Right. Which means it wouldn't remove all personal function from her.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's how we came to get you. Actually, she was she met you through a friend who was also one of your patients. And I've got to tell, I always have to tell this story because whenever you come up in conversation, perhaps it's not as often as you would think, right? But one evening we stopped in Dr. Burton's office. CarolAnn had an appointment for an exam. We went in there, and as always, I go in, sit in the waiting room while she's getting her exam, and as always, there were like 5 or 6 women sitting in there, some of them visibly pregnant. Everybody, just women, no men, and we were all sitting around reading New Parent magazine. And suddenly, Dr. Burton sticks his head out. And after CarolAnn's gone back into the office, you stuck your head out into the waiting room and looked around and said, "Hello to everybody. I'll be with you as soon as I can." And you looked at me and you said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm fine. How are you?" And you said, "Good, good." And you looked at me and kind of looked pleased with yourself. And you go, yeah, you really, really do look good. I said, "Okay, thank you." And then as you started to retreat back into your office, you turned to the rest of the room and explained to the ladies, you pointed at me and said, "That's my first sex change operation." And you closed the door and left me there. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but it sounds like something I would do. And occasionally I'd get in trouble for that kind of thing, but usually people understood that I was a jokester, a bit of a jokester.
And I didn't even say anything. I didn't know what to say. So we just kind of let it go. I think I told you this when I talked to you before, not too long ago. I recently underwent a
Colonoscopy.
Colonoscopy. Thank you. Gosh.
Yes.
See what
I do
happens
remember
to
that.
Huh?
I do remember that.
Yeah. This is a great conversation. I can't imagine the people that are checking this out. Anyway, and after I came out of it, the doctor was there and he was saying, "Well, it went real well," and blah, blah, blah. And CarolAnn asked the question that I refused to ask. As I said, this guy has probably heard this 1,000 times and I'm not going to insult him with it. But she asked, she said, "How did you decide to take up this specialty?" And he had a ready answer, because I'm sure he'd heard it a lot. He said, "I was late to class that day. And when I got there, they told me, 'You got butts.'" And that's how that happened. So I'm thinking you probably got the same kind of question. What made you go into obstetrician? Was it OB/GYN?
OB/GYN.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little different. It's a little more complicated than that. My father died when I was 13. And there was another gentleman who happened to be a general surgeon in town, and his son was my best friend, and he came over and said, Rusty, anything you need, father-son banquets, anything like that, I'm here for you, and I'll take care of you. And he invited Doug, my other friend, and I in to watch him do surgery occasionally. And I'd always wanted to be a doctor, so I thought, gee, I want to be a surgeon, and that's what I really wanted to do. When I got into medical school, which was, there's a story how I got into medical school, which is kind of funny, but when I got into medical school, my first rotation on the services, as they called it, was surgery, general surgery. And there was a little kid named Johnny, and my first rotation was at the end of June. So the 4th of July is coming up. Johnny was dipping his sparklers in gasoline to make them light better, and he got 90% third-degree burns all over his body. And the mortality rate with third-degree burn is essentially the percentage of burn you have. So he had a 90% mortality chance. And so the other medical student and I decided we would special this kid, take care of him 12 hours each. We did that for about 6 weeks, and finally he died. And I decided right then I never, ever want to see another burn patient. But I do like surgery, and I kind of liked family practice. And I thought, well, you know, OB/GYN, I can do gynecologic surgery, and I can, you know, back then women would come to their doc, and if they had a sore throat, they'd call their OB doc, because that's the only one they really had a relationship with. So I was kind of a family doc and a surgeon, and that's why I went into OB/GYN. It really had nothing to do with the gender of my patients, but as it turns out, they're all female. In fact, when I married my first wife passed away, I think I told you that.
Yes.
And I got remarried to a cute little California blonde, a couple of years younger than I. Actually, she's only 70 now. They almost issued an Amber Alert when I married her. But anyway, she was concerned because her previous relationship had been marred by multiple infidelities and things like that on the part of her past husband, her husband, as she calls him. So anyway, she said she was very concerned when she found out what I did, and we were dating, and she had concerns about this, and because her husband was a veterinarian and was taking out all the owners of the horses. And I said, well, let me explain something to you. When you go to your dentist, and your dentist is working on your mouth, do you think he has an insatiable desire to kiss you? No. She said, thank you. That explains that. So anyway, that was.
I thought you were going to say you told her, well, when you've seen one, you've seen them all.
No. Well, that's not true, but we won't go into that.
Yes, please.
So anyway, I just finished up with my 50th reunion for medical school. And
really?
It was interesting. It was the second. Actually, it was 2 years ago, because I graduated in 1970, and but we got to get up and tell stories and talk and things like that, and it was really a lot of fun. And I always tell the story about how I got into medical school, and I don't know if you want to hear this or not, but
yes,
I think it's worth listening to.
Yeah.
When back in the 60s, there was really no birth control readily available for people. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to have sex, you got married. Or if you did have sex, you got married. Those were the two rules. So I got married. Okay. Yeah. And a few months later, I became a father. And I wanted my wife to stay home and take care of kids. And I was in school. I was a junior in college. And I just turned 21, so I got a job tending bar. And the bartending went well, and but in my interview for medical school, one of the questions they asked was, "What do you do in your spare time?" And I said, "Well, actually, I don't have any spare time," because I didn't. And they said, "Oh, everybody has spare time." I said, "You don't understand. I'm married. I have a child, and my wife takes care of our child. And I work at the Howard Johnson's Bar and Grill, back when Howard Johnson's was around, from 5 in the evening to 1 o'clock in the morning, 6 nights a week. And I'm going to school full time and trying to keep my grades up." And I said, Sunday afternoon after church, we'd take a drive in the car. That's what I do in my spare time. Well, that evening, all 3 of the doctors that interviewed me were out at Howard Johnson's having dinner with their wives. And I'm sure they came out to check my story. I don't think they believed it. And I was there with my little red vest and everything on. They drank for free all night, and I got into medical school. So that's, I'm on the board of curators at the University of Missouri Medical School. And I tell that story to the younger medical students, and they all get a kick out of it. But
what does a curator do at medical school?
Not a whole lot. And I kind of complained because when I was going to medical school, I paid $500 a semester for medical school. Now I got through college with no debt. I worked my way through college, and I had about a $25,000 to $30,000 debt when I got out of medical school. Now these kids are getting out with a $200,000 and $300,000 debt.
Yeah.
And the tuition has gone up from $5,000 a semester up to about $500 a semester. I mean, up to about $10,000 a semester for inpatients. It's incredibly expensive. And I can't really see why it's going up that way. And the colleges in general are doing that. And it just makes me sick that these kids
I can't understand why we have new doctors all the time. You know,
well,
how can people afford to do that?
Not very many. I'll tell you what happens. Now in my class, there were 85 students in my class, and there were 2 females, both of them very smart gals, and they both did very well. Nowadays, it's 60 to 70% female in the classes in medical school. And I think the women have figured out that they don't want to be school teachers anymore because they have to work 5 days a week and sometimes on the weekend. And in medicine, they can get a job probably working 3 days a week, pretty hard, and make the same amount of money. And so they kind of do that. Now, that's not fair. A lot of women go into medicine because they really want to be a doctor and help people. But it's interesting that we've got so many women in medical school, and men. There's Dave. There's really no. Oh, by the way, did people? What your friends call you, Dave or David?
Both. Usually Dave.
Okay, David.
It's only CarolAnn, and before her, my mother. And CarolAnn calls me David, but that's it.
Okay. Okay.
Either way.
Either way. Well, anyway, now I forgot where I was going with it. Oh, the
women in medical school.
There's really no money in medicine right now. Most guys marry doctors because that's the only social life they have, is the other medical student in their practice. And so you see a lot of two people. And then they've got a $40,000 debt or $400,000 debt. I mean, so how they do it, I don't know, but they do that. And when I was in medical school, there was a majority of Jewish kids, and they used to, the old story about when does life begin? And in a Jewish family, it's when my son graduates from medical school. So anyway, the people that are really out to make a lot of money, unless they go into plastic surgery or something like that, there's not a lot of money to be made in medicine. It's because usually they get out with that kind of a debt and they can't afford to start practice, so they go to work for a hospital somewhere and get paid, $150,000 a year or something like that. And it takes a long time to pay off that kind of a debt at $150,000 a year.
It sure would.
So that's my story. But anyway, I started out and I got out and I decided first of all, I graduated from my internship. You go 4 years of medical school and then 1 year of internship, and then just look at specialties. And I was all set to become an obstetrician. And when I finished my internship, again, I was married, and by that time I had 2 children. And I had never had a student deferment. My draft number was 350. This is during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I got drafted.
Number 350?
Yeah. Well,
wow.
Yeah. So
that must have been early.
No,
right
I got drafted because I was a doctor.
Gotcha. Okay.
I called my draft board, and I got this African-American lady on the other end of the phone, and she shuffled a bunch of papers, and she said, "Well, let me explain something to you, Dr. Burton." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "We're drafting all the doctors." Okay. So I said, "Well, that explains it." And then she stopped and she said, "Nope, we're drafting all the man doctors. We don't draft the girl doctors."
Oh,
so
that was then.
So that was then. Yeah, that was then, and it certainly couldn't get away with that at this point. I don't think we can have a draft. I went to Israel a few years ago, and they have a draft over there. Everybody gets drafted for 2 years of service, male, female. If you're the daughter of the prime minister, you still get two years of service of some kind for your country.
So did you go into the service?
I got drafted into the Army, but because I went to the University of Missouri, which is a land grant school, we were required to do 2 years of ROTC. And the guys in my fraternity said, you don't want to be in an Army ROTC because you have to polish these brass buttons. Going to the Air Force, they have just these silver buttons that don't have to be polished on your uniform. So I did that. So because I was too lazy to polish buttons, they gave me to the Air Force. The Air Force doesn't draft. They just get pick up how the Army's draft.
Right.
Sent me to Utah, and I spent a couple of years there and broke my leg a couple of times skiing, had a good time, and then ended up, they offered me a residency, a 4-year residency at Travis Air Force Base in Sacramento. I did that, got out, paid 2 years back for that, became a lieutenant colonel, and it was a little tempting to stay in, and because I figured I could have been a general and one of those guys, but I really wanted to practice medicine. So that's when I got out and started my own practice.
So maybe I missed it. Why? What was it that attracted you to gynecology? And pardon me?
The surgery. I could still be a surgeon and not have to be a general surgeon. That was the main thing.
I see.
And I could still be a family doctor as well. And I like I developed good relationships, and CarolAnn will attest to that. I really developed good relationships with my patients. Enjoyed every minute of my practice. Yeah. I delivered about 8,000 babies in my career, and I quit in around the year 2000 because I had a little medical problem. I have a completely blocked internal carotid artery on this side from a blood clot. And so that's called a stroke, David.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's not worth my life. I figured that babies are made at night and they're born at night. So I was up in the middle of the night too much and too much sleep. So I stopped delivering babies and just did only gynecologic surgery at that time, and did that until I quit a few years ago.
I'm trying to figure out now. I remember draft time in the Vietnam era, because I'm not that much younger, a couple of years younger than you. So I was going through that too, but I'm trying to figure out, and in those days, still, the people they drafted were young men. They didn't draft women, and there were very few women in the services. And I'm trying to figure out what a gynecologist would have done in the Army. Well, in the 60s.
Not a whole lot over in Vietnam. So that was one thing that I didn't think I'd go to Vietnam if I got in the Air Force. But on all the Air Force bases, all the soldiers have wives, and they all have to be taken care of. Yeah. So we did that. I did a lot of deliveries. Got a lot of things sent in from overseas for some of the wives. I think they call them WAFs, Women's Air Force. Some of the wives that got sick at that time. We were doing abortions and a lot of pregnancy terminations, and I did that until it became. I remember when the government decided that they wouldn't be paid for by the government. We had about 5 or 6 in over the Christmas holidays to get their Christmas abortion, and so we got them all done before the first of the year so that they'd be paid for by the government. We don't do that anymore. I don't do abortions anymore. It's not part of my life I'm proud of, but I did, and it's over. I can't.
Well, I was just about to ask you how you view this whole most recent flare-up of the controversy and the Supreme Court decision. Without getting into your politics, I'm just curious as to how that affects you as a former gynecologist and somebody who did abortions. There must be parts of the issue that the average person doesn't really understand.
Mm-hmm. That's correct, David. I'm very conservative, and I don't believe in late-term abortions at all, and I didn't do those. But the abortion system is good for people. I think even young people who, 18, 19-year-olds that have a career in front of them and they get pregnant by accident once. I had people coming back to me every 6 to 8 months for their repeat abortions because they were using it as birth control, and I don't agree with that. I'm pro-life to the point that again, I'm not Jewish, so I know that life doesn't wait till you graduate from medical school, but I think that when you can see 15, 16-week baby moving around, heart's beating and everything, that's a tough thing to ignore and to call not life. So, but sometimes they're needed if the life of the mother is at risk, from severe preeclampsia or things like that happened. Yes, I think it's certainly appropriate. I am pro-life to a point, and I'm pro-abortion to a point. So I'm kind of in the middle, but I am a little to the right of Attila the Hun when it comes to politics. So
I figured you probably were.
yeah, right.
Now, there was a time when I remember, and by the way, I probably haven't really made this clear as to how you and I became friends. It's like, why is this guy talking to his wife's ex-gynecologist? But
Let me explain that.
Yeah.
I was going to there was a guy back at that time who was one of the gurus for nutrition, and I can't remember his real name. But anyway, he labeled himself as Captain Carrot. You remember Captain
Oh,
Carrot?
yeah. Gary Nosler was his name.
Gary Nosler, yeah, Gary Nosler. He was Captain Carrot. And I'm riding to work one morning after I had spent some time, because you'd come in with CarolAnn, and I'd always invite the husbands in to talk, and we'd joke around and everything. And then one morning he said, well, I saw Captain GYNO yesterday. so you named me Captain GYNO because of that. And I still carry that moniker around. I'm in these football things that people do to my moniker is Captain GYNO. That's what it is.
Is that right?
You gave me that. Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Me that moniker, and we people kind of in medical school, that was what they called me.
I remember now that it was the morning after the visit that I described earlier, where you stuck your head out and made that crack about me being your first sex patient. And the next morning I went on the radio and I addressed you as Captain GYNO.
Right.
I explained your actual name and where your practice was. And I said, I just wanted to reassure those of you who may, if anybody's listening, who might actually have an appointment with Captain GYNO this morning. My understanding is that by 10 or 11 o'clock, his hands stop shaking, and he's probably past the worst of his hangover by now.
Right.
Things like that. So
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was
we wound up playing golf and stuff like that.
Yeah. And more than that, I used to play the guitar. Remember that?
Yes.
That little group that
I was going to ask you about that.
Don Peterson, who was a general surgeon, we call him common surgeons now, but as a general surgeon, he played the guitar and banjo. And the hospital we were at was a private hospital at the time, and they would have a fundraiser every year, and it was they'd have kind of a talent show, and everybody would come in, and there was some real talent in that, and the nursing staff. But Don and I got labeled to come and sing, and we were the what we name ourselves, I can't remember the name. I'm getting old too, but we sang songs like "The First Things in Life Are Fees" and the hemorrhoid song. There's a lot, that hemorrhoids always itch and always burn. Hemorrhoids to the tune of Detour.
The one I remember is "Got the Runs Again."
Got the runs again.
Got that fire between my buns again.
Runs again, yeah. Taking low modal by the tons again, because I got the runs again. So that was made up. That I made that song up, but the hemorrhoid song and everything was made up by a group that loaned me money in Springfield, Missouri, the Greene County Medical Boys and the Greene County Medical Society, and they had money available to loan to doctors from Greene County that were in medical school, and they made it all on selling these records and everything. So it was really kind of fun. But I asked you one time, could you come and MC the thing? And you did it. You did it. You didn't charge us anything at all, and you were very, very helpful, and people love to see you. And so I think a couple of times, I think you did that a couple of times for us. I think
it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Yeah. And we had a good relationship, and it went on. I medicine. I just made a few notes here in the 70s to 80s. Was wonderful. It was absolutely what I had expected. I had good relationships with patients and this kind of thing. And we'll talk about malpractice in a minute here. But after the 80s, when we started with what I call mismanaged care, and they call it managed care, but the insurance companies got involved, and all of a sudden the patients belonged to the insurance companies and not to the doctor's practice. Yeah. And it was disappointing. They told us how much we could charge patients. If we couldn't balance bill patients, you go to the dentist, you give them your insurance, and then they balance bill you if it doesn't pay. But doctors can't do that. We all signed on to it. We were a little bit naive. They say doctors don't know how to manage money, and they're probably right. We really don't. But and then when computers came in, and now you go to the doctor, and if you're lucky enough to see a doctor, they renamed us all too. We're no longer doctors, we're now providers. And
Right.
That was the worst thing that happened, because when you see a provider, you don't know if it's a nurse practitioner or if it's a medical assistant. You don't know. They're all providers.
Mm-hmm.
But now they all sit and look at their computers and sit and type while they're seeing you, sometimes with their back to you, if you see the doctor. Yeah. And that's the thing. My wife just had a colonoscopy, and she'd had some indications for it. And I went in to see the doctor, who was this young man from the land of the elephant. You see a lot of Indian men go into proctology, and I'm not sure why, but anyway, we never saw the doctor. We saw the nurse practitioner. She scheduled the colonoscopy. Yeah. I went with her to the colonoscopy because she'd been having some black stool, and that's serious. And I wanted to talk to the doctor, and I went up and said, I need to talk to this doctor. I'm Dr. Burton. I would like to talk to Dr. So-and-so afterwards. And the nurse came out to talk to me. I said, I was going to talk to Dr. So-and-so. She said, he was in it too much for her. He's got busy practice. So I never saw the doctor. My wife never saw the doctor because she was asleep by the time he came in. That's not the way to practice medicine. It just isn't. So many doctors nowadays, I don't know when's the last time you had a physical, but doctors don't touch patients anymore. They just don't.
Well, no, as a matter of fact, I had my annual physical just a few weeks ago, and there's the doctor that our general practitioner we've been going to for a couple of years. I've only met him twice. I don't care, the physician's assistant's fine with me, as long as there's nothing going on that of any great concern. But yeah, it does strike me as, I always figure that it must be the way they have to manage their business because of overhead and malpractice insurance concerns and that sort of thing. And, just for the efficiency of the office. So now we've got a couple of PAs and one doctor, and I don't exactly know where he is in all of this, but, so far so good.
He's got a stable. He's overlooking. Let's talk about malpractice for a minute.
Yeah.
Have you had a teenage son?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And what did you have to pay for his automobile insurance when he was 16, 17? A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. Because he was a bad driver.
Right.
17, 18-year-olds they're more of a risk.
Right.
So malpractice insurance, and kind of, if you look at it, it means the really bad doctors go into orthopedics, neurosurgery, obstetrics and gynecology, and the really good doctors go into dermatology or allergies and things like that. So it's really not malpractice insurance, it's maloccurrence insurance.
Oh.
So they should call it that. But I've been sued for maloccurrence. I had to deliver a baby with missing a finger on his hand, and I had to go to court and explain to the jury that fingers are formed at about 15 weeks. And this baby, when I had given her some heparin because she had a blood clot in her leg, which could kill her, put her in the hospital, and I gave her heparin at about 20 weeks. And so I said, so you're telling me that the heparin made the finger fall off or something, I guess, which it doesn't do that. In fact, it was only in dogs that the heparin thing was done. So really, it's maloccurrence insurance. And the other thing I've done, I had a foreign exchange student with me, and his father, he was from the Netherlands. His father happened to be an OB/GYN doctor. We had a lot of conversations, and he invited me over. There were some procedures that I used to do that they don't do in Europe very much, called an endometrial ablation, where you go in and cauterize the lining of the uterus so there's no more periods. You can do that instead of a hysterectomy and save people a lot of time and energy and money. So I went over to teach these doctors over in the Netherlands. We stayed up one night, probably all night long, with a bunch of gynecologists drinking, having a great time after my course to them. And they pointed out to me that contingency fees, you see these things on TV, there won't be any charge to you unless we win your case. Right. And that what they're going to do is to take 40% of whatever you win, or usually it's 25 to 40%. Contingency fees in Europe are not only unethical, they're not allowed. They're against the law. They don't do that. If we had no contingency fees here, there'd be, and they encourage people to sue people.
Right.
And if we had contingency fees, no contingency fees here. But who makes the laws in this country? The Congress. And who's in the Congress? Just lawyers. So that's a problem. I've got something written down here about funny stuff. And one of them is one of the things I wrote down was gender, and the other thing I wrote down were tattoos. And so I thought it might get unserious here again.
Yeah, well, that's your take.
When I went into first started my practice, I'd been there about maybe 4 months, and I went into an office. I was renting an office, and there was an internal medicine doctor, a relatively old Asian man who had a funny sense of humor. I won't give his name because I think he's still practicing, but he sent over a patient to me, a little old lady, for a pap smear. And so my receptionist, the lady gal that helped me was probably 25, 30 years older than I was. Her name was Lucy. I don't know if it was Lucy who was still with me when you were there, but this person sat up on the table, was draped and everything, and put her feet in the stirrups. And I lifted up to do her pelvic examination. She had a penis and testicles. Oh. And I said, I think you're in the wrong office. And she said, no, I'm in the wrong body. I want you to do something about this. And Dr. What's his name? I sent it over, I think, as a joke to me. So anyway, we sent her down to San Francisco, whatever. The other interesting gender thing that I had come in was a gentleman that I knew. I had delivered his wife's baby with him. And he came in, I started doing hormones later on at the end of my practice, and he came in and wanted female hormones. And I said, and with I thought was his girlfriend, and we talked about it, and I said, well, I don't really do that. I said, but so you feel that you really are a woman, and I accepted that, I appreciated that in some people. And he said, yes, I really am, and I need to do something. I said, but you've got your girlfriend here with you. And he said, oh, we're lesbians. So I said, okay. So, you have to get all this stuff. The joke is when the baby's born and they say, is it a boy or a girl? You say, oh, you have to wait till the fourth grade to find out.
Right.
I can't say.
I was wondering about
ahead.
that too. Your views on the whole gender dysphoria thing and the way so many people, it just seems it's like suddenly all these young people have decided that they're, pick one of 30 different gender names now. And it's something people your age and my age don't get it. And I'm still trying to understand. It's like, you can be whatever you want. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make any difference to me. It's your life, but it makes it very difficult to learn how to address people and how to deal with them and that sort of thing. The world's changing big time, Doc. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I'm not into this pronoun thing at all. I call people, what I think they are. But and as far as the gender, when you're 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, and I went to Mizzou. I ran the hurdles on the track team at Mizzou. I joke around and say I was the fastest white hurdler in the state of Missouri my senior year in high school. I was the only white kid in the finals of the high or low hurdles, and the coach gave me a little scholarship, not much, but a small one. But anyway, I'm not in favor of this 18-year-old kid who runs the hurdles deciding he's really a girl and wants to go and run in the Olympics. And I could have won the Olympics, the female Olympics, no question about it. But I'm opposed to that kind of usage for this. There are some very comfortable. My brother was homosexual, and he ultimately died of AIDS. But he was a good guy, and I loved him, and he was just my brother, and he was smarter than I am. But I'm okay with that kind of thing. But just waiting and deciding you are one thing. I have a niece who decided she was really lesbian, and then she decided she's really not. And they kind of go back and forth, and we're encouraging all that with all this stuff that's in the news and everything. And
there's a lot of people that think that this is more of a trend than anything else, that,
I think it's a way to get attention. I
yeah.
think a lot of people think they can get attention that way, and but who am I to say?
Well, we were just talking about it this morning, in the news aspect, that the governor of Oklahoma has said he's just declared it illegal for very young people, teenagers, to get gender reassignment in any fashion, surgery or hormones or anything of that nature, because the big fear is that they're 15, 16 years old, and in a few years they're going to regret that, and it's going to really make for a major mess in their lives that they can't undo.
Well, I agree with that. And you can't buy alcohol under the age of 21. I think probably 21 is a better age to make that. By then, they can screw up their life if they want to. I don't know, but I think these grade school teachers that are telling their kids that they're really the wrong gender, and we all saw kids in school when we were growing up that we knew were kind of fairies. I think we used the word fairies.
That was one of the words. Yes, it was.
Yes, and that's. But I think they're probably waiting until they are of age. When I got married, I was 19. My wife was 18. I had to take my mother with me to sign for me, because I had to be 21 as a guy. If you were a girl, you could get married at 18, which was kind of interesting. So anyway, I'm retired now, and that's kind of a problem for me, Dave. I enjoy what I do. My wife and I moved out of California for lots of reasons, and I don't need to go into all the reasons, but it had to do with politics, it had to do with water, it had to do with cost and things like that. In fact, she called me one day at the office. My new wife. Today's my anniversary, Bill.
Oh, how many years?
Not enough. I always would tell my patients when they bring their husbands in, and anytime somebody says, "How long have you been married?"
Yeah.
The only right answer is not long enough.
That's great.
And if there's other women around, they'll all say, "Oh."
Yeah, of course.
And you'll probably get lucky that night. So anyway, we're having our eight-year anniversary today. So we're going to go out to dinner tonight.
Happy anniversary.
Have a good time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's been great. But she called me at the office and she said, "We're going to move to California, to Missouri, and all my family lives here." She just got notice that there was the water shortage. They were going to limit us, and the neighborhood that we lived in, called Gold River. I don't know if you've heard of Gold River or not.
Oh, absolutely. We lived in Fair Oaks, right across the river from there.
They were going to Fair Oaks has got lots of people camping out on the streets now, by the way.
Do they really?
Oh yeah, it was horrible. But anyway, they were going to limit us to 52 gallons per person per day of water. And that's to water your yard, to do your laundry, to take your showers, to flush the toilets, 52 gallons per person per day. And a huge fine if you went over that. And they checked with their water meters. And Janie said, first of all, I don't have to comply with that. But secondly, this is going to really affect the value of our home. And so I moved in with her, so it was really her home, and it was paid for and all that stuff. So she said, we're going to move to Missouri. She put the house on the market. It sold the same day. And she bought a house here in Chesterfield in St. Louis, where I live, online. And it's perfect. It's just absolutely perfect. We got a swimming pool in the backyard, and it just fits us perfectly. My little sister here lives here, and she came and looked at it, and she said, "Yeah, you better buy this right away because it's going to go in a hurry." So we did. So we got back to that. But when we were here, I was still I had several thousand patients who still consider Dr. Burton their doctor.
Right.
And, the doctor-patient relationship is one thing, but the gynecology patient relationship is a whole nother thing. Patients, I don't want to say they fall in love with you, but you're the one they want to see. That's just the way it is. And I wanted to not to desert them, so I started doing the hormone business. It was bioidentical hormones. We would rub have the compounding pharmacy would make up a cream with estrogen and progesterone or whatever, and they would rub it on their arm every night before they went to bed or whatever. And they don't have to take pills, and because it's transdermal, not oral, there is no increased risk of breast cancer. And it was very safe, and it made everybody happy. They didn't have their hot flashes. They still had vaginal lubrication. They still had all the stuff they needed to be good people, good wives, and good sexual partners and everything. So I kept doing this online. And it's because you don't really, I had access to their records by the electronic medical record and all that. I really didn't have to do any examination. We just went through and talked to them, and I would refill their medications. And they needed to see me, I think, every 6 months or something on the refills. And we would do that, and we didn't take insurance. I think I charged $100 a visit or something, which is not very much to do. And patients loved it. And finally, I just got tired of it. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I sent everybody a list. I had a name of a person in Sacramento that would take care of them. And so it's been a year now. It's a year in September that I haven't done anything but, work around the house, play. I'm a golfer. I like to play golf. I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. I'm down to 197 pounds and in good shape. So I feel good, and I'm having a great time of it. But retirement is not something that I really want. I thoroughly enjoy delivering medical care to people and talking to them. And I said things in my office that most doctors are afraid to say. I would say, tell me more about that.
Oh.
Doctors don't want to do that because they're in a hurry. They got 15 minutes to see the patient. I took my time. I wasn't on that kind. I didn't work for the hospital. I didn't have to do it. So I've got no regrets in what I did in my medicine practice, and happy as hell that I did it. I would encourage people to go into it, but not for money. It's not a money thing.
You have the time now to do something that you told me 30 years ago that you were going to do, and that was to write a book. I remember you had a great title for the book. Do you remember that? Had to do with a woman that you did surgery on, and you found a rare gem.
Oh yeah. I found I think it was a diamond.
Yeah.
In her abdomen.
And the book was going to be called A Diamond in the Muff.
How did that? No. It was How Did That Get in There? Or a diamond in? How did that get in there? Or something like that. Yeah.
I remember it both ways, but yes.
I've never sat down and accomplished that. I read voraciously. I love to read, and but writing, I don't spell very well, and I don't. When I took typing in college, in high school, I knew that I wouldn't ever use my typing because I'd always have a secretary. So.
Well, doggone, I thought you were serious about that book.
That's something to think about. And some of the chapter headings I remember, though. One was, how did that get in there?
Yeah.
You do an exam and there's something sitting up in the vagina that's not supposed to be there, And I've had that happen. And then the other was tattoos I've known, which was kind of some of the funny tattoos that I've seen, that probably not.
How did that diamond get in there? Where was it in her?
It was in her peritoneal cavity inside the belly.
See, I'm a guy. I don't know anything about the female.
Okay. Well, I was doing a hysterectomy on her.
Yeah.
And we got a hole in their belly, go through the muscles and open up the belly, the peritoneum, which is the inside lining. And you see intestines and uterus and everything there. And we pull all the intestines away. And there was the uterus, and attached to the fallopian tube in the uterus was a little diamond, a very small little diamond. And my partner at that time was a pathologist, Gary Bostrom, and he was a GYN pathologist, so he was assisting me at the surgery. And he when the surgery was over, he took it down to the pathology department, and they agreed that was in the belly. So what I think happened was she had surgery for appendicitis or something years and years earlier, and it was probably one of the little diamonds out of one of the nurses' glasses. I don't think it was a real diamond, but anyway. But I got it. I was published for that one, and one of these funny magazines. What do they call them? The title of it was "Shocked Doc Seeks Cancer, Finds Diamond." and it was those magazines that have all the funny stuff, not funny stuff, but things that you can't believe. But anyway, we were testing her for she had a lot of pain, and she needed a hysterectomy because of the bleeding she was having and everything. And I walked out into the waiting room and I said to her husband, I said, well, I've got some good news and I've got some great news. And I said, the good news is we found a diamond inside your wife's pelvis. The great news is she doesn't have cancer. And that was good. So he was happy with that. But, we can't really do that and go out and tell people what their diagnosis was anymore, because now we have to wait till it's on the patient's chart and the electronic record and the insurance company knows before we actually can say that this is what happened. It's just,
seriously?
it's just crazy. Oh, yeah.
The insurance company has to find out before the patient does?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or if I don't know what the reasons for that are, but and that may just have been in California. California's got a lot of strange rules, by the way, that they have. In fact, when I went through medical school, they told me, be careful what you write on a patient's chart. You don't want to write this fat, hairy lady in the chart,
No, right.
So,
yeah, well, that makes sense.
Overweight hirsute lady. But anyway, they said because these charts belong to the patient. They're not your charts. They're the patient's chart, and they can have them and read them anytime they want. Well, when medical records came along and the insurance company started getting involved and the hospital started getting involved, and they had all these drop-down menus, and we had to, for everything we ordered, we had to say why we ordered it. And there's reasons why the hospitals wanted it, because they could charge for everything that way, and the insurance companies the same way. But I was not allowed. My wife was dying from lymphoma and polycystic kidney disease. I was not allowed to look in her record, even with her permission. As a physician, I couldn't look in her record. I looked in one of my grandson's records one time because he'd been broken a leg and they didn't live. They didn't live close by, and I wanted to see what the pathology was. And it was, but they called me and said, "Why are you looking in this little boy's record?" I said, "It's my grandson, and you're not supposed to do that. You don't have any right to look in that." I couldn't even look in my own record because they did, the insurance companies and the hospitals and the medical records. Medical records are great and they're awful all at the same time. I don't know what to do about it. I don't
understand why you can't look at your own records. I don't understand why you can't look at your wife's medical records, especially as you're a doctor. But as you said, even that's irrelevant. They belong to her, and as long as you've got her permission, how does that stand up?
Well, the people who run the medical records is a hospital, and they don't want patients getting into their own records because they're afraid they might change something. I think, I'm not sure what it is, but
I can understand the motivations, I guess, for the hospitals to try to keep that stuff out. But legally, they just, how can they get away with it?
Dave, I don't know. But they are getting away with it right now, and I think it's due for a change. I just talked to a buddy of mine at my 50th reunion, and he had nothing but bad things to say about medical records, and he was one of the smarter guys. I was not the smartest guy in my class, by the way. They say the top third of the class make the professors and stuff like that in the school. The middle third usually make the best doctors, and the lower third usually make the most money. So I was in the middle third. So anyway, well, listen, my hearing aids are ringing in my ears right now, and I'm getting all your voice through I'm either going to have to change batteries or we're going to have to tie this up. Let's tie it up, Dave, and let's do this again sometime.
Okay.
I'd love to talk to you, and then maybe
great.
in a year or two you can find out what I've done with my spare time. And I'm on the choir in my church. I still sing. I'm a tenor, and we're doing a lot of things with going to the church to do things for the church and stuff like that. I'm not a born-again Christian, but I am very much a believer. So that's what I'm basically doing right now. And I'm deeply in love with my new wife, and we're going to live together for a long time. And I think she'll probably outlive me, so I'll have somebody to take care of me. So that's good.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'll just say one last thing based on what you just said. And that is that you're an inspiration to me, because I know how much you loved Susie, your first wife.
Yes.
And now to see that you are equally so in love with your second wife is very inspirational to those of us who are getting to an age where we fear one of us is going to be left without the other. Will I be able to make it?
Yeah.
And you're proof that yes.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know if you remember Kathy Taylor, my nurse practitioner. Her parents both died together when they were like 75 years old in a car wreck. And I always thought, well, maybe that would be the best way to go. I always will often wonder what's going to happen when I get to heaven, if I do, and I think I will. And I've got these two women up there, but I think they'll probably, everybody will get along up there and it will be fine. So that's it. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to you, Dave.
All right.
Give CarolAnn a big hug and a wet sloppy kiss for me, if you would. And be sure and
Thank
call
you.
me again anytime you want to do this, and we'll do it again. And I'll try to
All
get
right.
my batteries, my hearing aids doing.
Thank you, Doc. Thanks,
You
Rose.
salute the captain, remember?
You betcha.
Okay.
Gotcha, GYNO.
See you
All
later.
right.